Hello everyone, it's Monday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. Sam Altman, co-founder and CEO of OpenAI, the tech company that wowed the world with the release of generative AI platform ChatGPT, visited Seoul last week as part of the OpenAI Tour 2023. He met with President Yoon Suk Yeol and, while underlining the importance of semiconductors, urged Seoul to become a partner in preparing international standards. In a meeting of hundreds of startup leaders and journalists, the CEO noted that South Korea had the talent to be a leading force in the AI field, showing an interest in making investments in new businesses. What were the key points Altman pointed out in his Seoul visit? And what are the challenges South Korea is facing in terms of developing the AI sector? For an in-depth analysis, we invited Lee Soo-young, Professor Emeritus at KAIST. He is also co-founder and CTO of Artificial Language. Professor Lee, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join.
And we also have Ashik Kuttabaksh, a professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Professor Kuttabaksh, good to see you.
Same here. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
All right, first question to our Professor Kuttabaksh. Let's first focus on what was discussed during an hour-long meeting between President Yoon Suk Yeol and OpenAI Chief Sam Altman. Altman pointed out that Seoul needs to focus on the semiconductor field, given that in the AI era, there will be a significant increase in demand for both memory and non-memory chips. First of all, how are they linked?
So, the recent AI breakthrough happened because of two key reasons. First is that these systems, they are trained on massive amount of data. And memory chips, as the name suggests, these chips are essential for data storage. So that is how we need these systems to be trained on a vast amount of data. And that's how the AI breakthrough is connected with memory chips. Now, non-memory chips, they encompass a broad range of functionalities that include image sensors, CPUs, and GPUs. And these large-scale AI systems, when they're trained on this massive amount of data, they need a substantial amount of computational power. And this computational processing power, that is how the non-memory chips are related to the recent AI breakthrough. So this is how, through a requirement of massive amount of data and requirement of massive amount of computational processing power, the memory chips and non-memory chips are related to the recent AI breakthroughs.
Right, so I can see how AI boom could open doors of opportunities for South Korean chip makers indeed. Professor Lee, how could South Korea use this AI boom as an opportunity to further increase its chip market share?
Yeah, it's a big opportunity, but as a user, we need to work harder and efficiently. Although the needs of both the memory and processors will increase with the AI boom, the increase of parallel processor will be more dramatic. Even in the late 1980s, when the Korean Brain Tech Research Program was established with Brain Research Promotion Law, we emphasized that Korean semiconductor industry has advantage on the parallel processor with many of the simple processing devices. In some sense, parallel processing chip is more closer to memory chips than processing chips. Therefore, excellent fabrication capability of Korean semiconductor industry is much more important than the lack of complex chip design technology. However, chip design and fabrication themselves are not all. Actually, even in early 1990s, a few good parallel processors have been developed in Korea, but it was very difficult to write code for that. So I believe the strengths of NVIDIA came from the hardware and software co-design capability, which result in CUDA programming interface for writing parallel code by simply adding one line of code. In summary, it is an excellent chance for Korean semiconductor industry, but required to develop both chip and programming interface together. Thank you.
Right, I see. So South Korean chipmakers would have to put more efforts to develop the sectors. Now, Professor Kutabaksh, Altman underlined the need to have international standards to prevent the risk of side effects that are related to perhaps ChatGPT or AI in broader sense. What are the current worries that people have right now, and what should be considered when preparing these kind of regulative standards?
The first thing to keep in mind is when we are deciding these regulative standards, who gets to decide these standards? Because if there is a community that does not get the opportunity to voice their concerns, they might get discriminated against by these powerful systems. The second concern is ChatGPT and similar technologies. They often inadvertently produce extremely believable looking content, but they are factually incorrect. For example, recently in Manhattan Federal Court, two lawyers submitted a document aided by ChatGPT, and that document actually cited some cases. Those cases never happened. They are fake, fictitious cases. So how to build strong guardrails against factually incorrect generated content is one of the major challenges. And the third challenge is how to tackle copyrighted content when generative AI systems are trained on those copyrighted contents. They might regurgitate some of those content. So how can we address that challenge? And finally, the most important challenge is how to prevent bad actors from using these technologies for malicious purposes.
Right. Given what our Professor Kutabaksh told us, I can definitely see the need to set up regulations, but some do worry that these guidelines and regulations could perhaps hinder research and development by South Korean AI companies, and as such could be seen as a case of kicking away the ladder for related companies. What's your view on this, Professor Lee?
I agree. We have urgent need on global guidelines and regulations on AI. However, the guidelines should not aim for preventing overstated risk in the future without considering the possible remedies of the risk. I would like to point out that the stopping or pausing AI development, as proposed by some people, is neither feasible nor required. Unlike biological cloning, AI is based on software, and if necessary, we are capable of tracking any variables and detecting symptoms of any malicious operation. The guideline and regulation should be made for case by case at the smallest application domain agreeable by all shareholders, such as users, developers, and government. However, it is important to prepare guidelines for all the future possible cases. It reminds me of the early days of AI with two distinct approaches, rule-based and learning-based approaches. The two approaches have competed, but after AlphaGo, the learning-based AI is dominating. The main problem of the rule-based AI is the uncertainty in the future. So it is impossible to predict all the future cases in advance at the time of development. The same issue occurs at AI regulation at this moment. We simply cannot prepare all possible rules for all possible future cases. It is not an issue of preventing how AI may harm human goals, but an issue of monitoring, detecting, and managing the possible problem adaptively. I would like to reiterate that the human is not stopping or pausing baby birth just because there exists a chance the baby may not fit to the human society. Instead, we have nurtured the baby to become a responsible grown-up. The guideline and regulation on AI should be the same thing.
Right, I cannot agree more. Now, Professor Kurabash, moving on to meetings Altman had with more than 100 startup leaders and journalists, the OpenAI chief encouraged people to launch businesses as the world is in the middle of a revolution similar to that of the internet started. How do you see the AI revolution shaping the world right now?
I think this is an exciting time for AI practitioners to be part of this interesting journey. Recently, DeepMind presented a new method to a more efficient algorithm for sorting. Then there has been some interesting drug discovery that has been going on. And then the virtual reality and augmented reality area, they're seeing some great breakthroughs. So I think that the AI revolution will touch almost all spheres in human life, and it will be an exciting time for all of us. And I am a scientist who works at the intersection of artificial intelligence and political science. I can tell you that I have already started using GPT and similar technologies for my research. And it's incredible to see how fast we can build systems to understand complicated social science questions. And like 6 months back, we could not imagine that we could actually develop systems this quickly. So I think it's a great time to be an AI researcher.
It's definitely interesting to see how the AI could be used in every sector, including the political science. Now, Professor Kurabash, one more question to you. Staying on front on what Altman said to startup leaders, he actually pointed out the talent South Korea has, saying the country has remarkable assets to pioneer the AI technology. What are the unique assets, in your point of view, that Seoul has that could be an advantage compared to other countries?
I have been very fortunate to work with students from South Korea, and they are very talented, creative, extremely hardworking. And some of my star students in my research group were from South Korea. So they have a very talented pool of young researchers. And encouraging startups is a good thing because startups can take brave and ambitious projects, and that can really shape the future in AI and future of human life. So I think that's a great thing. And Seoul actually has a unique vantage point because it's an Asian technological hub. So it can have a unique perspective on inclusive AI and responsible AI that can be a critical voice in the global AI, responsible AI movement.
I see. And that being said, Professor Lee, Altman expressed his interest in cooperating with and investing in South Korean startups. In what way could this be done? And could this be, in a way, for South Korean startups to accelerate participation in the AI boom?
Good question, but there is no king's road. We only need to make collaboration and competition together. AI is not a technology for a single industry. AI is the enabling technology for all industry. The important point here is that both the big giant and small and medium enterprise of this exponentially increasing industry cannot afford to do everything by themselves. They need collaboration. The strategy is called standing on the shoulder of a giant. However, to make this strategy work, the small and medium enterprise or startup should not just look for mercy of the giant. They need to contribute to the giant too. The good SMEs and startups should make their own unique strengths on technology and or business model over the global giant, and least on a very small portion of the business and technology domain. In the technology domain, the best collaboration scheme resides in the bilateral sharing of the code and data, especially for Korean, related to the Korean language and Korean cultures. The next may be to join the ecosystem of giant by developing application services with the giant provide API or utilizing their plugin. the capital investment on the startup may be the last thing. Thank you.
Right, Professor Lee, I definitely agree that collaboration is very important. But as global tech companies like Google are already planning to enter Korea's market with their own services, some experts say that we need to worry about big data being collected by those global tech giants, as it could make domestic companies dependent on their models. What's your view on this?
I agree. It is very important. But the data is the most important part of the current deep learning-based AI system. However, Korean economy simply cannot protect Korean companies from penetrating global companies. It should be bilateral. So instead, we'll need fair collaboration and competition again, maybe to overcome the disadvantage of playing on slated ground. We may need to find more creative business model and the technology advantage. Also, we need to have intellectual property rules for personal data, which clearly say that the data belong to each person, not to the platform or service providers. Individual people may not be able to track all the uses of his or her data. Therefore, a non-profit or government organization may track and collect appropriate fees from each user and distribute the fees to individual owner. In summary, I do not think it is a matter of AI ownership. It is a matter of intellectual property on personal data. Thank you.
Right, I see. Now, Professor Kurabak, since our Professor Lee talked about how Korean tech companies need to be more creative when it comes to their own AI services, Naver, Kakao, and KT are actually planning to launch their own AI services within the latter half of this year. And experts say that they need to come up with more, like our Professor Lee touched upon, like more sophisticated versions to compete with the industry giants. What should they focus on, in your opinion?
So, as a starting point, there is a healthy dose of concern about the big tech giants, about how well they will be addressing the inclusive AI and responsible AI challenges. So if this Naver, Kakao, and KT, they focus on these issues right off the bat, then that will be a good thing. And the second thing is when ChatGPT and BARD systems like this got released, the initial first few weeks, there were a lot of jailbreaking incidents where people could break the system very easily, or people could make them produce inappropriate or inaccurate content very easily. So if these new efforts, they learn from the lessons from ChatGPT and BARD and take care of those issues before they release their systems for public use, that will be a good thing.
Right, I see. Now, Professor Lee, as a last question, I'd like to ask you, of course, competing with big tech giants is a very important thing, but sometimes domestic companies would have to see the support from the government coming, right? So some experts say the domestic companies are already going through many difficulties, such as securing AI chips and establishing data centers right now. What support do you believe the government should offer to nurture South Korea's own AI tech companies?
Well, it is very important the government support can promote the Korean businesses. But on the other hand, again, it should be bilateral. So I strongly believe that Koreans are well educated and very energetic, and it is enough to let them play on a playground, flat playground, not slanted playground, by removing future uncertainty. It is also important to set, as soon as possible, clear so-called negative guidelines which prohibit certain types of behavior and allow all the others. So it will encourage companies to start something new without worrying about future regulations. So it is very urgent thing. It is also important to provide positive ecosystems with fair business between giant and small and medium companies and startups. Also, hardware and software co-design is essential. The important contribution of NVIDIA I already emphasized, but the last point I emphasize is the education of users. So AI users is also contributing as a prosumer. That means they provide the data for the training. So how to use the AI with higher capability is very important. Sometimes the government may need to have some license of using highly learnable AI system. Like you need driver license. Thank you.
Right, I see. Education is the utmost important. Now, hopefully enough and proper support could be provided for South Korean companies so that they can actively seize their own opportunities during this AI boom on a flat playground, as our Professor Lee pointed out. Now, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition, but thank you, Professor Lee and Professor Kurabash, for your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
That's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.